Welcome back to another episode of Sketch Nerds, presented by Bad Medicine, DC's best comedy about the worst of humanity. Here on Sketch Nerds, we break down sketch comedy, what we like, what we don't like, what works, and what doesn't work. Today, we'll be discussing sketches from Saturday Night Live and The Human Giant. Joining me, as always, are Seth Alcorn and Julian Morgan. I'm Andy Weld, and today we are excited to have our first guest, Elizabeth E.K. Kemp. E.K., how you doing?
I'm doing great, Andy.
Well, great. We're really excited to have you on the show. Why don't you give us a little bit of your comedy background?
I am one of the founding members of Bad Medicine, and, I just spend a lot of time with comedy, and that is about the extent of my qualifications to be here.
Good. Well, we're all equally qualified as you, so it's off to a great start.
That's literally what when people ask me, like, what is your comedy background? I'm just like, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
I told jokes, and my parents said I was funny, so here we are.
Up first today, we will be discussing a sketch from Saturday Night Live called Halftime Dance, or Halftime Inspiration, maybe.
We don't know what it's called.
There's not a name for it.
May have a title.
But I'll throw it to EK now for the read.
Sure. So this is a 2007 Saturday Night Live sketch about a disheartened basketball team returning to the locker room after a brutal first half. Will Forte stars as the earnest coach trying to inspire them to keep hope alive. Forte recognizes that he'll need more than a speech to motivate his team. And so he reveals a cassette tape that he claims features a song used by UCLA coaching legend John Wooden to inspire some of the greatest turnarounds in sports history. After pressing play on a comically small boombox, the song is revealed to be Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass Band's jazzy and very upbeat theme to the 1967 film Casino Royale. What follows is then nearly 90 seconds of increasingly frenzied bouncing, jazz hands, kicks, twirls, and any other form of bad dancing that ultimately win over the heart and mind of the sketch's other star performer, Peyton Manning. It ends with Peyton joining Forte as the two joyously make their way back to the court, seemingly unaware that the other players have stayed behind and abandoned the game.
And now, here's a clip.
Come on, sit your buns back down. Okay, we can't just give up.
But Coach, these guys are so good, and I'm very, very scared of them. I mean, can I be real with you right now? I mean, like, really, really real?
Yes.
I just thought about going out there for the second half, and a little bit of pee came out.
I mean, right out of the gate, this is just one of the most remarkable comedic performances I've ever seen. I've always had a soft spot for Will Forte, but this one in particular, just it's magic.
What's so magic about it?
I think there are a couple of key things happening here. First is just the total commitment that he has from the first second the sketch starts, and certainly all the way through the dance. He just seems to be completely locked in, never breaks character. But even while he's doing it, there is a moment where it's not quite clear if it's Will Forte or if it's a character. It comes across as completely sincere and earnest, and just the joy and the fun that he's having. And that really comes across.
I think one of the great things that this sketch manages to pull off is being able to do or have 90 seconds, as you noted, of Will Forte dancing and truly getting increasingly funnier throughout. Oftentimes, I think when sketches have some kind of long, extended, whether it's a speech or a dialogueless build, they hit a point that it's gotten to be funny, and then you're kind of waiting for that section to end. And he really hits the apex when Peyton Manning joins him.
Yeah, that was a really good beat for him to come in on. Like right when it looks like Will Forte might be running out of moves, he's starting to repeat a couple of things, and then Peyton Manning comes in, and it is newly hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's like, I think that's probably the third. The dancing part is maybe the third. Third beat of the sketch, where because like what they do is they set up that trope of halftime speeches, and we've all been there for movies. We've all seen those, and they set up that expectation, and then they immediately turn on its head by saying, you know, with the first sort of joke where he's like, where he talks about peeing his pants.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like he's trying to be motivational himself. So he's like, I've been where you guys are. If I hadn't peed my pants, I wouldn't be who I am today, right? And then so that doesn't work. And so the next beat is then I think just them dancing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like it escalates to the dancing in a really great way because we already know those tropes from all those sports movies for halftime, you know, pep talks.
Absolutely. Now, EK, one of the interesting things about this sketch is all that's done that's not on the page. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So, I mean, I would love to see what this sketch did look like on a page, because essentially what it is coach tries to inspire team, dances, only wins over one guy. You know, I don't know how you would sell that really, but somehow it's comedy gold. But I mean, this is a great example for me of something that, you know, I don't know how much of it was planned or not, but you have everything kind of working in support of the absurdity of this joke here, where it's down to the costume. You know, he's kind of in this everyman outfit, these like beaten up sneakers and ill-fitting pants. And even as he's dancing, you know, his hair is kind of bouncing and flopping in time with the music, and his face is just completely lit up. And there's just I don't know how you would write that on the page. And so that kind of speaks to the power of performance as much as anything else, and casting. But it's really incredible just how perfectly all of those planned and unplanned elements came together.
Absolutely. And Seth, when you're reading something and the stage direction says something like, and the actor dances, when you're reading that either first at the table or when you're actually starting to put it up, how do you approach a vague direction like that you know can really sometimes be the crux of a scene?
Well, I think the important thing here is knowing your performers. I mean, to put it this way, if you gave me that sketch, I would have flop sweat from the moment it said actor dances, because I don't know what I'm going to do except some really lame, like bad disco crap, because that was funny in the 90s when I was in high school.
Can you make it more about you, though?
Can I? I think I could. But Will Forte is clearly very, very comfortable doing physical comedy. It looks like he's had some dance training, frankly. And you have to have, and I don't think this is exaggerating, you have to have a virtuoso performer who can just do 90 seconds of what looks like improvised dance, and as EK said, just have this sort of joy shining out of him. I just want to tack onto that a little bit. I think the coach mustache they gave him, right, really, like every facial expression he has during the dance is amplified by the fact that he's got a coach mustache.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about is Peyton Manning in this sketch. Oh, yeah. And so Peyton Manning, obviously, he was an NFL quarterback for 18 seasons. He played for the Colts and the Broncos, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But he also has done a lot of acting, or commercial acting. Been on Saturday Night Live twice, I believe. And so I think the question I want to ask about Peyton Manning, both in this sketch and maybe elsewhere, is he good, or is he good for an athlete?
That's a great question.
He's probably one of the better athletes that performed on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think he's good?
I think he was good for and I think he was good for the set that he was in. And I would even wager that that Will Forte actually wrote the sketch,
He did.
So,
He
yeah,
did.
He did
right.
with John Lutz.
Right. So Will knew how long he was going to dance, what kind of dance he was doing. I'm sure he had it in his head. And then bringing Peyton and Manning on, like just giving him something fun to do that's not necessarily delivering jokes. It's just like, give him something physical to do, so to get like that way, it takes the pressure off of him. And so just like giving him something to do like that, something physical to do. And dancing obviously is like, he's a tall white guy. Like,
It's not his strength, area of
yeah,
strength.
yeah.
Well, he managed very well for the most part. I mean, there are some moments where, planned or not, he managed to pick up exactly what the cues were from Forte and join in on the fun. And I think was equally as committed to it at the end as anything else. And the jokes that he has that are front loaded in the sketch, he manages to deliver very well. I don't think they're actually the strongest jokes necessarily, but the material he has, he did a great job with it. And then, what's interesting when you look at the performance of Peyton Manning here is to contrast it with Michael Phelps, who then was actually in the follow-up to this sketch, where it was almost exactly the same sketch, but at least for me, the magic that was somehow captured in this one just wasn't there. And there is a big contrast in the performance, the commitment between Phelps and Peyton Manning. And overall, I'd say that was just a great episode of SNL in general, the Peyton Manning episode.
Yeah, I think his character, Peyton Manning, was like, it also was part of that star athlete trope too. So instead of being the star athlete that's like trying to also motivate his players, the players and stuff like that, he's the opposite and was like, I want to go home and kiss my French kissing bear, so it all at once it sets up this expectation of you're down by however many, we need to come together as a team. He immediately is just like, no, I want to go home, and the coach is just like, well, I pee my pants, so I pee my pants just like you guys, and so it already just like flips it on its head, and then that's where the funny kind of comes in,
Right.
So the jokes were like, where he's like I want to go home and French kiss my bear or whatever. It's like it seems out of place, but then if you just remember that like this is a sports trope, then,
Sure.
then
Yeah.
then it kind of makes sense.
He EK, you talked about earnestness earlier, and I think Peyton Manning had a very successful earnestness in his delivery. I always enjoy it when somebody is comfortable making fun of themselves.
Yeah.
And his whole character, as Julian was just saying, is a subversion of the star athlete trope. Everything he says is against what that type should say. Like gonna go home and bake snickerdoodles with my bros is a pretty good example. But he believed it, or his character believed it, and
His
I think
his game the whole time.
right, and that he really sold that, and especially when he gets up and starts dancing, he is also having a good time. Like when he does air guitar on Will Forte's leg, and they're both just they're so happy to be doing what they're doing that you want to go along with them. And I think what you were saying, EK, about the commitment difference between Peyton Manning and Michael Phelps is having an okay time. He's okay being there, but he's not really excited about it, or at least he doesn't read excited about it the same way that Peyton Manning did.
All right. That's a lot of stuff we liked about the sketch, or stuff that worked well. What about what could be done better? Where were some of the weaknesses in the sketch, EK?
Well, so as someone who cares a lot about writing and reliability and predictability, and those are actually some of the things, the ability to replicate something is one of the things I like about sketch as opposed to, say, improv. What gives me pause about this one in particular is that because there are so many different variables in it, and it's not clear which variable is really making this as funny as it is, it would be very difficult to replicate. And in fact, when they did try to replicate it in the Michael Phelps version, like I said, in my opinion, it just doesn't hit the same way. And is that because it was really that the song was what was kind of making the first version sing? Is it the fact that it was just Will Forte making up dancing on the spot and being really excited about it, and it was fresh and new? Is it the lighting or the environment they're in? All the variables that maybe they tried to play with a little bit did seem to have an impact on the sketch, even though on the surface it was virtually identical.
And I was actually just thinking, like, so the dancing is, for me, is like that's the third beat of the sketch. That's where they heighten to, and I wish they could have maybe had like a second level underneath that, between the "I pee my pants," maybe another rallying cry that fails, and then the dancing. But again, it's SNL, so they are crunched for time. So like they probably just want to get to the dancing part as fast as they can. But like if it was just a regular show, I'd want to see in that middle part.
Yeah, there's
there.
less clear escalation of the game. It's kind of, there's this whole setup of the troops are down, trying to rally them. There's no sense that we're building towards a dance number. And I think that's fine. I think that works well. It keeps you on your toes. It's unexpected. But it does break a little bit of what you would traditionally expect in terms of there's a first beat, and then the second beat is bigger, and then the third beat is bigger. It's like there are a couple of beats, and then there's a big beat in this sketch.
I think maybe some action from the rest of the players would have been interesting. I mean, they have to be there, right? In both the Peyton Manning and the Michael Phelps sketch, we are rallying a group of people. It's not just one-on-one. But in neither of those sketches do they really contribute much to the build. They're just sort of there,
There's
having
something-
facial expressions.
Yeah, there's something interesting that I wanted to talk about the background performers in that sketch. When Will Forte starts dancing, they start breaking. You can see in the background, anyone who's got a towel on their lap has moved it to their mouth. They are trying their hardest not to laugh. And that is something famously that Lorne Michaels, the producer of SNL, hates. Really, really does not like breaking. Audiences, however, love when actors break, or when it is a deserved break. It's
Right.
famously in that Debbie Downer sketch. In the Debbie Downer sketch, the actors are always breaking. And it adds to the sketch. And why do people like when actors break?
It breaks down the fourth wall in a way that very little else does, including audience participation. It's like when the person on stage laughs at the same thing you're laughing at, there's this weird level of human connection that you now have, whereas before you were watching somebody perform, you were now enjoying the performance with them. And
yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, I do think it's strange that Lorne Michaels doesn't like breaking, because Horatio Sands and Jimmy Fallon were on that show for a very long
Yes,
time.
absolutely. The kings of it. All right, any final thoughts on this sketch? EK?
Just, a great moment in comedy history, and if you're not watching Last Man on Earth, you should be. It's a great show. More Will Forte.
Ooh,
Absolutely. It's excellent. Seth?
I stopped watching.
I would watch a sketch that is just Will Forte and Peyton Manning dancing like idiots for up to 2 minutes.
It's a good limit. Julian?
My last thoughts are filled with regret.
About the sketch, though.
good.
About the sketch.
Okay. Yeah, but I thought it was a good sketch to get someone who's not comfortable acting, who was not an actor. Just get them comfortable and get them doing something stupid and silly, so that the audience can get on board as well.
Absolutely. And this sketch, unlike the two sketches we discussed last week, had a pretty solid ending.
This podcast is brought to you by the sketch comedy troupe Bad Medicine, DC's best comedy about the worst of humanity. I'm in that group. We're all in that group. It's fucking awesome. Visit badmedicinecomedy.com for showtimes, funny videos, and hilarious t-shirts. But I guess that's up to people's opinion.
All right, now we're talking about Human Giant, which was a 2-season MTV sketch show helmed by Aziz Ansari, Rob Hubel, and Paul Scheer. All three of them have gone on to some degree of success. Ansari and Scheer, arguably more than Hubel. I just wanted to, well, I'm just saying. Come on.
He was funny.
No, he's funny, but he doesn't like have a well, he's on a show, but he didn't have his own show, and he also wasn't on anything as big as Parks and Rec and
He does a ton of
regular role.
commercials.
He
though.
does a ton of commercials. I'm not saying he's not successful. I'm just saying I think Aziz Ansari and Paul Scheer are more successful than
Emmy
Rob
winner.
Hubel.
Yeah,
Fight
sure.
me, internet.
Up next on the Rob Hubel podcast.
Who's this Seth Alcorn guy? No, I also wanted to point out that because we did a Derek comedy sketch last week, it's just interesting to me that in our first 2 episodes we are talking about sketch groups whose members have become more famous after they were out of the sketch groups.
UCB groups too.
UCB groups too. I didn't know that Derek Comedy was a UCB group, but I suppose I probably should have guessed. Yeah. All right. So Human Giant, in general, they played with a lot of lightly absurd stuff, or starting off lightly absurd and then just going down a deep well of absurdity. They also like to do multi-layer sketches. I think, what was it called? Oh, Catching a Predator, which I might end up talking about later. Somebody might. It's virtually an inception of a sketch, which is pretty cool. And then they also like to do things like break up their sketches in between pieces, cut back and forth between different sketches, which, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So this one, we're talking about Morning Zoo. And Morning Zoo features the brief adventures of a 4-person Morning Zoo crew the week after a nuclear holocaust. And it's basically a bunch of them cracking Morning Zoo jokes, which are charitably not funny. Possibly offensive. Actually, probably offensive and just flat out not funny.
And for someone who doesn't know, a Morning Zoo crew is?
Sorry, Morning Zoo crew is usually the morning commute to work people on radio stations.
Drive Time Radio.
Does anybody remember radio stations? Anyways, and even if it was not a talk radio station, these guys were usually more talk than music. They would have sketches, they would have guests, they would do interviews, and generally they'd be obnoxious, which is what the 4 members of this Morning Zoo crew do until they send one of them out to do a Vox Pop or Man on the Street bit that doesn't go as intended. Why don't we listen to a little bit of this sketch?
Well, get ready to go outdoors. Here I go.
Good luck! Breastman is out there in the nuclear holocaust. Breastman, what do you see?
Oh, Jesus, God. Oh, God, this is terrible.
Hey, Breathman, are you touching yourself or what? What's going on?
I bet he's out there just masturbating. I think that's why he left the bunker, because he needed to masturbate and he couldn't do it with us in here.
Guys, shut up. This is serious. There are people swarming all over me. I'm getting attacked.
Oh, man, I wish I could get attacked in bed. Oh, yeah.
Well, what a cheery thing to hear there.
Wasn't it, though? I did want to continue on with last week's themes of just how much dark can we fit into our comedy.
Yes.
It's a good place to start. Seth, what do you like about this sketch?
I like that rather than starting lightly absurd, they just jumped right into it. There is a Morning Zoo crew. They have found a bunker that can withstand a nuclear holocaust. All of their recording equipment is in that bunker, and they are still broadcasting as though nothing had happened. I honestly think that it really works when they have no choice but to acknowledge the truth of their situation. I think that's when it really starts to get funny.
One of the things I like about this sketch is the way that the reveal that there has been a nuclear holocaust comes out of nowhere. It's almost a throwaway line in itself. It's just kind of like, yeah, and out there in the nuclear holocaust. Well, there was a nuclear holocaust. And it catches you off guard at first. It's not funny when you first hear it because you're like, what?
Right.
What did I just hear? But I think it's a great kind of way to set it up. And it's complemented by throughout the sketch, and it really captures the zoo crew feel.
Yes.
Is the way that it's shot. It's a lot of these kind of like, it's choppy and there's some like zooms in and out that are a little weird, but really fit this feeling of kind of, it almost makes you think of like a 90s commercial or something like that. And it's frenetic. And that's that zoo crew feel. Julian, what do you like about this sketch?
Yeah, they actually do have like where they film those zoo crew. Like I know there's like a morning show in LA. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's like a fat guy. I think his name has something to do with fat.
Big Boy?
Big Boy.
Is it Big Boy?
Yeah. Okay. So like they actually have
subtle.
they actually have a record, like they actually record his, like, you know, with film cameras and stuff like that. So it matched that perfectly. What I liked about it too was just those subtle moments. They kind of build up to that man on the street bit. They build up to it very slowly, where it's like, you know, hey, we have T-shirts made in China, so you know it's good. And Aziz is like, dude, China's gone. Like it's done. Like everyone's dead. You know, so like they keep building up to that until they get to the man on the street bit. And for me, what's really funny is that they're like trying to hold on to a sense of normalcy.
Right.
And so like them doing this whole show was just them just kind of trying to, you know, just have like a normal life for a second. And that is just expressed through them doing their morning show. And so like when they keep dropping those little those little bits about what the world is like outside, it's hilarious.
One of the things that kind of plays into that is they're just trying to like cover up the madness and how it changes through the sketch. Early in the sketch, when Paul Scheer's character is playing music, he kind of does it in a flippant way of like, yeah, next up we've got more music. And then later on, after Rob Hubel's character has gone outside and presumably been attacked by the mutated people or something, he's doing it to like cover his like how he's feeling. And NEK, can you talk to kind of the writing technique that's happening there, or what's going on with the writing, that turn that happens there?
Well, I think what's great about that moment is that it's not clear if the distress is entirely related to the death of their co-host, or if it's that he doesn't quite know what the appropriate song is to play. And there's some argument between him and Aziz Ansari as to what song should come on next.
Yeah.
And I think Aziz's character is very much in a place where he's mourning, and Paul Scheer in his ridiculous oversized cowboy hat, you know, the grandest gesture he seems to make in that moment is to take off his sunglasses that for some reason he is wearing in a bunker in a nuclear holocaust.
Very bright during a
very
nuclear
bright.
holocaust.
But to that point, you know, one of the great things about this sketch and about the writing in this sketch too is how fully realized and developed all of the characters are. And there is not a single joke or second that is wasted on any kind of an exchange between them that doesn't continue to underscore exactly who these people are and the role they play in the sketch.
Yeah. Seth, can you talk about the characters in the sketch?
Sure. I would like to talk about the characters in the sketch.
Then I've asked the perfect
I've been
question.
raising my hand for like 25 minutes.
It's a podcast. No one can see
We're
you.
all in different rooms.
Right. I'm, in fact, in New York. All right. Okay, so Aziz Ansari's character is my favorite. We don't find out his name until Rob Hubel's character, Breastman, or Dave, is, as far as we could tell, being torn apart and possibly eaten by the mutants when he cries out in pain in extremis, Stinky Shane. That is Aziz Ansari's character. But Aziz's character is my favorite because while he starts off fully in the same mode that everybody else is, it's just a normal day, we're doing this thing, he's the first one to let it slip. And once it slips for him, he can't ever quite shield himself in that morning zoo nonsense again.
He's the closest audience proxy that we have.
Yes, he is the closest audience proxy. I think then actually after that is Breastman, but only after he goes outside. And we don't see him go outside. We just hear him describing it as terrible,
which is a great choice.
Which is a great choice.
Just do it with audio,
right? And shortly after that, you know, again he's ripped apart and eaten, and just calling out for any kind of help from his bunker mates. The help is not forthcoming. Paul Scheer's character, Barry, I honestly like, well, Barry and Sheila are the last two, and I like them because they are clinging with their fingernails like they are over a cliff. They are not going to let go of the morning zoo. It is the only thing they have keeping them together. And Paul Scheer's last line is like, to lose both the Rappin' Granny and Breast Man in the same week, right? His entire world got blown up the week before. But what he can't handle is losing two of his sidekicks.
Yeah. And it goes to one of my favorite lines, too. Which, what's her name? Sheila?
Sheila. Yeah.
It's a great bit.
Oh,
yeah. It's not your fault.
It's a great bit.
It's not your fault. It's a great bit. It's just so funny. Like, that, to me, that was my favorite line.
Well, and it's a commitment to a bit where it's clear that there's probably no one listening, and they just sacrifice their friend for a breast joke that probably only they heard.
It reminds me of a sketch from one of the groups we looked at last week, Mitchell and Webb. They do a sketch called The Quiz Broadcast, which is like a quiz show that's happening in a apocalyptic wasteland, and it's that same kind of clinging to reality.
If I recall correctly, though, that one they can't even, like, their prizes are something like the least mutated steak we could find, or something like that. Anyway.
So one of the things that is parodied in this sketch is the sexism that comes up in kind of this style, this bro-y kind of almost shock jock style of radio. And that's parodied in this. Are there any points where the parody stops working and it just feels misogynistic? Or does it really work throughout the whole sketch?
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to be the first one to comment on that.
All right. Well, not to be sexist, but EK.
Well, Andy, as a person with tits,
well,
I
did too,
to
but they weren't.
Yes,
on
society
purpose.
doesn't approve.
I actually did not take any issue with sexism here. I mean, that is, they established the trope easily, quickly. I mean, that is just the nature. Like, the problem is not with this sketch, it's with those shows. But I mean, that's, this is how Howard Stern and those types of personalities have built their whole careers. Would it be great if that could go away? Sure. But for purposes of this sketch, I mean, Sheila is look at that. No one even remembers her name. I don't remember her name.
Well, we all remembered her name.
Okay, the men remembered the name of the woman with the large breast. That actually is, you know what? I just want to pause for a second and just, you should all give yourself a round of applause. That's great.
I don't know if I've done a good thing or a bad thing here. I remembered her name, but maybe for the wrong reasons.
If for ironic purposes, I did not remember her name. If for serious praise, I was on board.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I said Sheila.
You sure did. You sure did, Julian. That half-remembered name of a
Regardless,
character.
I want credit for something. Okay?
And you will get it. Your name will be written down alongside ours as a man who remembered
unless
the name
it's
of the
bad,
woman
and then I
who
want
showed
to be
us cleavage.
written apart from you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep going on this.
But I mean, even having her be the one to deliver the line at the end, it was a great bit, Barry. Great bit. I mean, almost through tears is. I don't think any of the other remaining characters could have delivered that with the same effectiveness.
I definitely agree. And I honestly, I go back and forth a little bit about this because EK is definitely right. This was a hallmark of pick your morning zoo show. This happened. They spend an awful lot of time on it. But is it disproportionate to what would have happened during an actual morning zoo show? No, probably not.
And some of those jokes they make are actually pretty great. I mean, I know you didn't like some of them, but some, like, as far as really capturing the energy of what those morning shows are like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, they're fairly quick-witted.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that can strike such a weird note sometimes, like a very positive note, but a crass joke that is like brilliantly executed or written is a really awesome thing. It really hits in such a great way that is both universal and highbrow.
What I love about the crassness at the beginning and stuff like that, because the emotional aspect at the end, it's so much like it feels so much more earned. So like when they're doing all of the misogynistic jokes and stuff like that. Just like Ike said, when she's crying at the end and saying that bit worked, and then but also just having Aziz, he's kind of like mostly doing I guess it's Paul Scheer that's mostly doing the misogynistic jokes, which is the one bit where he's just like that when you change the sheets in that when you change the sheets in that womb, which is funny.
That's just a great pun.
Yeah.
Room and womb. Like,
Yeah,
come
yeah.
on, that's
But just
hilarious.
and then at the end to just have Aziz Ansari just like kind of looking off into the distance, like in utter disbelief that he just lost a friend. Yeah. So I think it's just totally earned.
What in the sketch could be improved upon? What different directions would you take the sketch, Seth?
Okay, this is minor, but since we just spent a few minutes talking about misogyny, that bit where during the whole Chinese shirt thing, Aziz Ansari says "ching chong," I think we've already established who they are. I didn't think we needed that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I might have liked to have seen a follow up in the same episode, like a week later, just to check in on them and see what's happening. And especially if we can just get down to there's just one of them left trying to run the show, I would have liked to have seen that.
I would have liked to have seen just if they like it's the same sketch, but just have like little nuggets of like how their relationships have changed now that it's the end of the world. So like they're in a bunker together and they're putting on this show. So like what's the dynamic now? You know, I think that would have been really cool. Also, just a side bit would be like if they like and now we're gonna go out to the callers and they just press the call button line and it's just static.
Yeah.
And they just sit in it for a while.
Giving a sense of of what their audience is or was or isn't.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I would love to see how like what's changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
EK, anything you would do differently in this sketch?
Well, coming full circle, what we started talking about this with Rob Hubel, he has a character, he has a role to play in this, but he's kind of underutilized in many respects, and he is sort of disposable. So I guess it maybe would have been nice to see a little more development of that character before they ultimately kill him off. Just so
Spoiler alert.
what cat's out of the bag on that one. But just so maybe as an audience you have a little more sympathy for when he's gone rather than just in the abstract of seeing someone that's a part of this team get brutally murdered outside in a nuclear holocaust.
All right, everyone, let's talk about our final thoughts on the day. Anyone? Actually, let's go to you, EK. As the guest, why don't you come up with a rating system for how we're going to rate these sketches today?
Because there is a bag of Swedish fish in front of me, I'm going to say pick a number, pick a type of Swedish fish.
What are the types of Swedish fish?
I was going to ask that.
Are there multiple types of Swedish fish?
Well, there's small, there's bigger, they come in different colors and flavors. There's the red is the classic, but
Let's go with the classic red Swedish fish.
Cool. You guys always pick stuff that I don't know about, and it makes me feel like stunted.
I don't think you need to know a lot about Swedish fish, a cherry candy, to accurately give a number on this.
I think cherry's being generous. It's more of like a gel.
It's a red flavor.
Cherry
it's
type?
red. It's a goo
Red
in
40?
the shape of a fish.
Is that the dye?
Yeah.
Julian, I also have to point out that always is twice. We did that twice.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, well, it's starting a pattern. Okay.
Okay, no, that's
There's
fair.
a trend.
That's fair. Okay,
There's a trend.
All right, so Swedish fish.
Swedish fish. Julian, how many Swedish fish would you give the halftime inspiration sketch?
Out of what?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. I will give it 1,000 Swedish fish because I thought it was okay. I thought that like it was it did exactly what it wanted to do, which is cool. That's why it's got 1,000. But as far as like actually, I don't know. I give it 1,500 Swedish fish.
1,500. EK, how many Swedish fish would you give halftime inspiration?
I would give it at least 87
87.
Swedish fish.
All right.
And, since we have not established what the value of one Swedish fish is, I'm just going to say that it's, it's one of my favorites. I love it. I would even be willing to say 735 Swedish fish.
Damn.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Just moving the decimal point over just an inch.
Yeah.
Just
Round the two.
Yeah.
Round the two.
I think I'd have to give it about 20, 25 Swedish fish because that's about as many as I can eat before the flavor starts to cloy, which is pretty much how I feel about that sketch. They gave me just the right amount.
I agree. I think I would give it 2 Swedish fish for the number of Super Bowl rings that Peyton Manning has won. It's 5 Super Bowl rings, 5 Swedish fish, like Tom Brady, but that's an issue for a different podcast. How about...
Also, Boston sucks.
Boston sucks.
We can talk about this after class.
Is this about sports?
How about Morning Zoo? Seth, how many Swedish fish would you give Morning Zoo?
Morning Zoo, I'm actually going to give 18 Swedish fish because I could use a little bit more.
Fair enough. EK?
I'm with Julian on this one. I think it achieved what it wanted to do, and so I'm gonna give it 1,000 Swedish fish.
1,000 Swedish fish.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm also go with 1,000 Swedish fish because it was well executed. It's hard to come across a sketch that's like that well executed.
Absolutely. I think I'd give it 1 Swedish fish, but 1 Swedish fish that's been horribly mutated.
Absolutely
It's
fair. Absolutely fair.
what brought the downfall of Rob Hubel.
Yes.
It was 1 horribly maimed Swedish fish.
How many Swedish fish would you give Rob Hubel specifically in that sketch?
I'd give him at least, I'd give him about 30. Be like, here you go, Rob. It's all right. Have these Swedish fish. Don't
What
worry
is
about
a
it.
breast amount of Swedish fish?
The better pun there. What is the breast
I
amount
know.
of Swedish fish?
I heard it. Thank you for listening to another episode of Sketch Nerds. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends about this show. You can find out more about the show as well as Bad Medicine on badmedicinecomedy.com/sketchnerds, where there will be links to the sketches we talked about today. If you want to listen to episodes of the show, you can find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. For EK, Julian, and Seth, I'm Andy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by Isaiah Hedden and recorded in Washington, D.C. The closing music tracks were provided by SoundtrackForEverything.com. All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act Fair Use Exemption for criticism and commentary. The Sketch Nerds podcast is brought to you by the sketch comedy group Bad Medicine, DC's best sketch comedy about the worst of humanity. For showtimes, videos, and funny t-shirts, please visit badmedicinecomedy.com.